Hello and welcome to the Public Affairs Forum of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin. We welcome everyone here today. Our program's mission is to nourish the mind and spirit and serve social justice. Our forums occur on most Sundays and are free and open to the public. We encourage you to attend. Our church is physically located at 4700 Grover Avenue in Austin, Texas. For more information about our public affairs forums, you can go to our church website at www.austinuu.org. Dr. Clare Wuellner is here today to speak with us about her organization, Foundation Beyond Belief. Dr. Wuellner received her PhD in entomology from the University of Kansas. Subsequently, she was a postdoc at the UT Fire Ant Lab at Brackenridge Field Labs. While there, she worked on biological control of the red imported fire ant. Since that time, she has been active in the secular community. She was the executive director for the Center for Inquiry for 4 years and is currently on the boards of the Atheist Community of Austin and the international charitable organization, Foundation Beyond Belief. She has been active in fighting the State Board of Education to ensure a solid science education for our next generation. Dr. Wuellner is currently the volunteer coordinator at the University of Texas Insect Collection, where she enjoys regular doses of interesting people and insects. Welcome, Dr. Wuellner.
Thank you. I'm actually on the board of the Foundation Beyond Belief. The person who is the executive director is Noelle George. She's also given a talk here at the forum, and this was started by Dale McGowan in 2009. He is a secular humanist who's fairly well known, especially for parenting books. If you've been at First Unitarian Universalist Church for long, you may have seen some of his seminars that he's given here about parenting in a secular way. It's kind of challenging in our day and age because the whole world thinks that the best way to parent is with religion, and that's not necessarily so. There are no guidebooks until him about how to parent in a secular way. But in his research, he found that religious people donated more to charitable organizations than secular people. And it probably came down to nothing more than the fact that religious people went to church every week and were prompted to give every week, whereas secular folks don't. And he thought, well, what if we created some sort of organization where people were prompted to give to charities regularly, even though it's a secular organization? And so he started this sort of passing the plate sort of organization, Foundation Beyond Belief. And it started simply as an organization through which people could give to charitable organizations that Foundation Beyond Belief vetted to align with secular humanist beliefs. And then the money was given out to those charities. Our mission overall is to unite the humanist community in volunteering and charitable efforts, and also to advocate for compassionate action throughout the world. And I have been on this board for a number of years, but in preparing for this talk, I was surprised as I went through everything that we have done over the past many years. And it's an amazing organization. I couldn't be prouder to be associated with it. Since 2010, our members and supporters have donated over $2 million to organizations working to improve the world. That's a lot of money for as few years as we've been going, really. And we have funded education in Cambodia, in Pakistan, Uganda, India, the United States, and 9 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. We've improved access to health care for marginalized populations on 4 continents, and supported populations at risk after disasters, both natural and human in their origins. We've supported efforts to fight global warming and protect biodiversity, and we've helped open a new school for girls in Pakistan and funded a 4-year college. And I was a Unitarian Universalist member for many years, and when I see all these things that we're doing, it really lines up with all of the Unitarian Universalists' beliefs and tenets, and it really has come full circle for me that I'm finally actually a part of something that's doing things for these important tenets. We've added humanist voices and dollars to the fight for LGBT rights, empowered adoptions, helped feed the hungry, worked to protect the most vulnerable, like refugees in war, victims of torture, women under threat of violence, political asylees, people struggling with addiction, and those seeking dignity at the end of their lives. And of course, we've fed a lot of people. There are a lot of organizations that focus on food. For a while, we had a Challenge the Gap program, which specifically looked to find charities that we could support that were religious. They had to meet certain criteria. They couldn't proselytize, but they they otherwise did good work. And we'll be bringing that Challenge the Gap category back soon. There are, in the Humanist grants area, you see there's grants there, we have poverty and health, human rights, education, and the natural world categories. And there are quarterly beneficiaries that are vetted by our staff. And the defining values of the Humanist Grants program is that the work they do has to be evidence-based. So many charities out there say that what they're doing has an impact, but when you look at the science behind it, most have no impact. For instance, there are charities that buy uniforms for girls in impoverished places because the schools require uniforms. It had no impact. What had an impact was a charity that went in and talked to the parents about the importance of getting your girls to school. That had an impact. And so what Foundation Beyond Belief does is they look at the charity and make sure that what the money is doing is making an actual difference in what they say they're making a difference in. It has to be community-based. It's been shown over and over again that if you want to have an impact as a charity, work in your own community. You will have the greatest impact because you have the greatest understanding. It has to be capacity building. In other words, it can't be so small and insular that if you use this model, it could be expanded and help other people as well. We like to support that sort of thing. There has to be transparency, of course. They have to have a vision that is clear and concise and that really drives the program. Innovation is also a good thing, and I'll show you, or at least talk to you about some of the organizations that we've supported that are really innovative. It stuns me, some of the things that we've found and supported. They have to be financially healthy, and we also like to go for a variety of things. We don't want to go with the same sort of charity every time. We want to spread it around. Once a year, the whole quarterly donation goes to what's called a Compassionate Impact Grant. And so the tens of thousands of dollars that are donated in that quarter by everybody who donates to Foundation Beyond Belief goes to a single organization. And that is usually some sort of game-changing organization. Like they have to be innovative, transformative, evidence-based, and solve community problems. One of them is starfish in South America, and their impact on girls and education has been amazing, and we've helped them with their schools through these impact grants. So those are the grants. The next thing that was brought to life was what's called the Volunteer Network, and that's on the far right over there. When I was here at First UU, I was the chair of the Social Action Committee for years. And then I got pregnant, just like every other social action chair before me, and since, as far as I knew. Pregnancy seems to be the way to end being a social action chair at this church. But during that time, it was, it's obvious there are a lot of people doing a lot of good things out there. And if you support one another and provide a community, it makes it that much more meaningful. If I'm doing my work and I'm doing a good job, that's nice. But if I'm doing it and there are other people who are saying, wow, that community, that group is doing a good thing, and everybody knows about what each thing offers and how you can dovetail, that's a good thing. So what this does is it allows any charitable organization that's secular to become a part of the network. And they have support for those people, and they have little competitions to see who has, for instance, the most activities in a period of time and so forth. And it's grown from being, I think, 17 groups to hundreds. I don't remember the exact numbers, but a lot of people are in this network, and any organization can become of that network. These are some recent recipients. I did want to talk about these. I've chosen a couple that kind of epitomize what I think are the sorts of things that FBB really has an impact on. This one is called 50 cents period. In certain cultures, women who are menstruating are shunned, and they don't have what they need to take care of it. And so they essentially have to hide, and they don't get to live life for a week every month. So this organization provides what women need once a month, a simple thing. But if you think about it, a fourth of your life is spent being shunned, and that's gone. And that's an amazing thing. The Innocence Project. So we've supported them in one of our grants. And then Lighthawk. If you're going to talk about whether a piece of land should be saved or not, you need to have actual evidence about how useful it is, how where it is impacting the organisms around it and the people around it. This organization uses volunteer pilots to actually photograph the pieces of land, who's using it, and with their working on it, they have contributed significantly to scientific research in identifying key pieces of land to preserve, not just any land. And this is one of my very favorites, Apopo. Anybody heard of Apopo before? Oh my goodness. Those are giant rats, and they are taught to identify landmines through smell, and then those landmines are detonated safely. Isn't that amazing? Oh my gosh, and talk about an impact. Oh my goodness. And now, and I guess within the last few years, they've been training the rats to be able to identify tissue samples that have tuberculosis in them. And they're more accurate than the tests. Such an impact, such an amazing thing to support. Okay, so those are the grants. And like I said, once a year, Compassionate Impact Grant, and this was EcoViva is one of them. The Humanist Service Corps. We all know about the Peace Corps, right? Well, this is our rough equivalent of that, and it's for secular folks who want to go out and make a difference in the world. And this was headed up by one person originally called Pathfinder Project, and he became part of Foundation Beyond Belief. They are currently working in Ghana to help women who have been shunned as witches in witch camps to become reintegrated into their community. It's a very superstitious area in Ghana where they're working. And the way they do this is part of what makes FBB something I'm proud to be associated with. They don't go in there and be the white warriors to help. They help organizations that are already in place there, local organizations. So they do whatever needs to be done. If you want to ask me what they do specifically, I'll say everything that the real organization needs them to do. They are truly in the background doing what needs to be done. And is this the right there at the bottom? You might recognize some of those people. That's the Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless, and they're also associated, at least they used to be associated with First UU. So they give out goods to homeless people once a month. That's them. Here's one of the things is, I know we all love giving and doing, we all do, but we also like to get those kudos and the pats on the back. And so one of the things that FBB does is every year they give out a Heart of Humanism, a Humanist Visionary, and a Humanist Innovator Award. And it feels good to get those, and I am proud that we are helping to encourage people to work in charitable projects. And we have national partners, and there's one down at the bottom that you might all recognize there. And okay, Humanist Disaster Recovery. I don't know if you remember when the tornado wiped out Moore, Oklahoma, and there was a woman interviewed on CNN, and he said, "Aren't you grateful that the Lord spared you," or something like this? And she said, "Actually, I'm an atheist." And she became quite famous for that. Well, eventually she partnered with Foundation Beyond Belief and other people who work for Foundation Beyond Belief and started this disaster recovery team. Because when she was working through her process, one of the things that got in the way was people helping her sift through her belongings and help her get started would say, well, let's pray for a moment. When you're dealing with so much, really the last thing you need is to be proselytized to. And if you've worked in freeze nights here, which I have, once in a while, one of the people who stay here will approach you and say, well, tell me about your religion. And you can say, it's okay. You can stay here and we won't hold your beliefs hostage or anything like that. So this was specifically started to offer that sort of help to people who need it. And we've deployed teams twice. So the drive is to provide financial support. We've raised tens of thousands of dollars for all of the hurricanes that have occurred recently. And then the teams go out and actually provide trained humanist volunteers. And they are trained. They actually have the skills. And you can be on this team if you want to. All you have to do is sign up. They've raised $13,000 to work with all hands volunteers I think this is in Houston. And they deployed 23 volunteers who contributed a lot of hours of work helping people put their houses back together. And this is just a fledgling organization. It amazes me what we've got done. The HDR has responded to all of these things. We've had an impact on all of those things. And if you want to join the HDR, if you want to be deployed and go help people, you can sign up. And if you just want to give money, hurricane season 2017 doesn't seem to be over yet. The most recent thing we have is that we are now associated with a podcast called Humanist Experience, and that is an episode about atheists in foxholes. And so we have, because there are some, and we're collaborating with them. So I think that's the end of it. Thank you, and I would love to take questions.
Okay, I think we have about 35 minutes left, so...
Good gracious. We could do my whole slide presentation.
So,
Okay.
One question I had is, where is Foundation Beyond Belief physically located?
Everywhere.
Oh, okay.
The executive director is in Houston, and the board members are all over the place. It is a virtual organization. There are 6 employees, and they live all over the United States.
Okay, so there's not like a storefront
Nope.
or anything like
No.
that?
All over the United States.
Okay, so when y'all have meetings, you just have them over the phone?
Yep.
Pretty much? So that
Yep.
cuts down on overhead costs too, I'm sure.
Yeah, that does. Sure.
Okay, so if anybody has questions, just flag me and I'll bring you the microphone.
You were talking about how your organization vets all of the charities that are supported by Foundation Beyond Belief.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit to that vetting process?
For a while, we had one person whose sole job was to do nothing but vet all of those organizations. And now it's, because we've been consolidating things, it's that we have one person who does that and some other things. It's a rigorous process. We have to see their books. We have to talk to the people who run the place. We look for the evidence. If they have to apply as well. The evidence has to be there. You can't say, oh, we do great things and we give, for instance, uniforms to girls who need them. Okay, what impact has that had? It's pretty rigorous. But every month we find several people that we have to choose among for each category. But it's pretty rigorous.
So you were saying that there are some religious organizations that you partner with, but they just have to show that they're not proselytizing?
Mm-hmm. That was the challenge, the GAP organization, or part of the grants, and we had that going for a few years, and then we dropped it, and we'll be bringing it back in 2018.
I'm Kelly Rayleigh, and my question is, I'm trying to understand how this organization works, and is there any relationship between the donations, like the charities that you choose to receive donations, and the charities that you're organizing the volunteer efforts for? Is there any relationship between those two sides?
There's no relationship. There's totally separate parts of the organization.
We got information on how the money, the donation, the groups that you select for the donations, we got information about how those were vetted. But is there a process for vetting for the volunteer groups?
Oh, you have to apply, and I'm sure they only accept the secular organizations and that sort of thing.
My name's Russell Eskew.
Hi.
I hope it's still okay to be Christian.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The thing is that the world is kind of set up for Christians already, and this is an organization that lets secular folks do the same good things.
I remember last year when your executive director came and I asked her a question about that, and I do have some experience with Christian charities through my work in the probation department. And it is a concern when, like for housing, like at the Salvation Army, you have to have a statement of faith. You have to pray, all those kind of things. So it sounds like you guys are different in that you will partner with them, but there's no proselytizing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are lots of good organizations out there that are religious. They do good things. But since we're a secular organization, when we partner with one, it really can't proselytize. It's just, it doesn't go with...
It makes it
beliefs.
conditional.
Mm-hmm.
It makes
Exactly.
the support conditional. And I
It's
think
conditional.
that's the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of reaction do you get from people who you're serving when they find out that you're non-believers, heathens?
That is an excellent question. Yeah. Gracious would be the overall sort of response when it comes to Foundation Beyond Belief. Foundation Beyond Belief has a positive reputation, and on the other hand, years ago we raised some money for a charity. I'm trying to remember which one. I should remember. It was a cancer charity, and they refused the money, even though it was a lot. It was like $200,000, and they refused it because it came from a secular organization, explicitly secular organization. That was very odd, and there was quite a lot of press over it. But by and large, people are very positive towards it. We're open to all sorts of beliefs and so forth, or I am as well, but I ask that the favor be returned. And that's usually when things break down.
And how do you do most of your fundraising? How does Foundation Beyond Belief raise most of its money? Do you have some major donors?
We don't have too many. We used to, but a lot of, in the secular world, the major donors are kind of rare, unfortunately. And so all the secular organizations are kind of vying for their attention. Right now, we make all of our money from just folks who give $10, $15, $20 a month. That's it. We run this whole organization and have donated all that money just on that simple sort of thing. We don't have any big grants. We don't have any big donors.
I was just wondering how people find out about Foundation Beyond Belief.
That
How
is
do
an
you do your
excellent
marketing?
question. That's an excellent question. Primarily word of mouth. And in the secular community, we're fairly well known. Dale McGowan is well known in the secular community, and a lot of people on the board are well known in the secular community, so when they talk about it, people listen and they sign up. It's pretty much word of mouth. I would love for there to be a day when Foundation Beyond Belief is as well known as the Red Cross. I mean, we do just as good of things, and we do more things. But
I noticed your
Not there.
slide was very up to date as far as the hurricane relief. Maybe
Yeah.
I'd be interested in hearing how Foundation Beyond Belief actually aided and I'm sure it's ongoing right now, how they're
It
aiding the
is.
hurricane survivors.
Right. It's still going. They actually, the two teams of HDR the human disaster relief that they have employed were both related to hurricanes. One was to Louisiana and one was to Houston. That's how nascent HDR is. And as far as money goes, we've broken records. I wish I could remember the exact figures, but it's a lot of money, broken records for people donating to help, just financially. And at this point, I don't think we've identified it yet, but we are looking for a charity to partner with in Puerto Rico. Again, we like to go with local, proven results, etc. And so they're vetting it right now. But we are taking money for Puerto Rico as well.
So you talked earlier about how you go in and do the work, but then you try to make it sustainable within that country where you're working at. So I'm sure those are the efforts you're doing now too.
Oh, that's, yeah. With everything that we try to be involved in, there has to be a sustainability to it.
How did you find the organization? How did you get involved?
It kind of found me. Dale asked me to be involved when it first started, but I couldn't because the Center for Inquiry felt that it was a conflict of interest for me to be involved with FBB and be with the Center for Inquiry. As soon as I got uninvolved with the Center for Inquiry, Dale called me and said, "Would you be on the board now?" And I said, "I would love to." So Dale asked me. I've known Dale for a number of years, and I think he's the cat's pajamas.
And what are your duties exactly?
I'm sorry, what?
What are your duties?
I'm on the board. We try to steer the organization. It went from being very small to becoming very large in just 7 years, and it's taken a lot of work to get it where it is. When it started with Dale, I think there were maybe 1 or 2 employees, part-time, both of them. And at our peak, we were 11 employees, and then the recession occurred, and so we had to pull back. But we're in the black, and we're doing fine, and we're growing. So that's what I do, in part. Yeah.
So as I think about the foundation world, there are a lot of other foundations already. Are there any that you work with, that you really partner with on a foundation level? Or are there some that you consider are models that are helpful to Foundation Beyond Belief as you're developing? Just wondering about some of the other foundations.
We partner with a number of organizations, quite a few actually, and I wish I had a list, but I don't. Maybe it's in the brochure. I'm sorry. There's a lot to know when it comes to this organization. It's got so many facets to it. For me, this is going to sound a little odd, but one of the models that inspired me was churches. I was very involved in First UU, and I worked in the office for a number of years and worked with the office manager. And when we were struggling at Foundation Beyond Belief for a while, when we had outgrown what we were doing, I thought, we need to run this place like a church. A church does all the charitable things that we do. It does the social action. It collects money. Everything we do is a church. And indeed, Dale initially set things up in such because he felt like we needed to have that same sort of pass the plate sort of opportunity. But we were still acting like we were small. We couldn't do that anymore. What churches do is they pay themselves first, make sure everything's stable and good, and then they take care of the charities. Because if we're not stable, the charities can't survive, or they can't be taken care of.
So people listening to this broadcast, if they wanted to get involved, I'm sure they could go to the website and find ways to get involved.
Yes.
Obviously giving money. Is there any like boots on the ground kind of work for people to do to get dispatched? You were talking about an arm of the organization where you actually go and actually do work, volunteer work.
Yeah, if you go to foundationbeyondbelief.org, there are opportunities to become part of the Beyond Belief Network, where your charitable organization gets hooked in with ours and everybody else's in the United States, really. There's, you can even go to Africa and work in the Humanist Service Corps if you want to apply for that. There's the HDR, the Humanist Disaster Relief, where you will be dispatched and help people in places in the United States and maybe elsewhere eventually.
Thank you so much for coming and
you.
speaking with us today.
Right.